What is up, wrestling fans, and welcome to another pay-per-viewpoint edition of the Smart Guy Moment Smack Talk podcast. We are going to be talking about AEW Full Gear coming up this Saturday. And of course, as always, if you don't know who we are, I am Tony Mango, joined by Robert E. Felice.
I'm full gear ready. How about you, Callum?
Yes, I'm too. I'm slightly off put by the lack of Tony introducing me, but that's fine.
It threw me off a little bit.
We move. We move.
That's right. That's right. You got to be full gear ready. Get ready.
About half gear, 75%. You know, full gear's a lot. That's asking a lot in these days. It is funny that wasn't that just a Hangman joke?
It was a Cody joke about Pac.
Oh, it was about Pac.
Pac always walks around in his gear, and he was just like, "Man, he's full gear ready." Hangman, you got to get full gear ready, and then that just turned into a whole thing.
That turned into a 6-year pay-per-view there. And it's just gears and everything. Because it's like, no, it's not about trunks. It's about gears. That's what it's for. So we're going to talk about all the gears. We have a bunch of different matches that are currently scheduled. Of course, there are, plenty matches that they could add to the card and some few things that are going to be tweaked here and there. We need some information about like the people that are actually involved in one of the matches for one of them. And as we normally do, we will talk about any kind of adjustments to that on the hot tags because this is being recorded before the Dynamite and Collision episode. But by Wednesday night, we should know the full card. I don't think that they're going to be announcing stuff later. But then again, there have been plenty of instances where it's been like during the pre-show, they just add 2 matches or something. So, any of that stuff, it's going to just happen on the fly. But there are 2 matches at the moment for the Saturday Tailgate Brawl. They're continuing that going on instead of their 0 hour or their buy-in or whatever other pre-show that they had going on, just like how WWE switched off the whole kickoff and now it's countdown and blah, blah. And then we have about, I think it's like 7 other matches that are on the main card. And we're going to run that all down, talk about our predictions, everything else that's going along the mix with that. And we want you to do the same thing as well. So pop on over to our Discord channel and chat it up over there. Have some fun with everybody else that's hanging out there. And leave a comment on any other platform that you are on. If you're on smartguymoment.com, great. If you are on Facebook and Twitter, tweet something out, whatever it might be. And if you're on YouTube, click the like button as well when you're leaving the comment and share and subscribe and do all the stuff that you normally do to help out any kind of YouTube channels you support, including the thanks button and the join button. And if you are interested in things like the Darkcast podcast, that's where you can find that. Same as patreon.com/smartguy-moment. If you want any merch, Redbubble and TeePublic is where you can find that for now until I figure out something else. And let's start getting into AEW. So again, there will be some things that happen on Dynamite and Collision that can change this. And some of the stuff that's been announced is pretty straightforward beyond that. But I'm kind of assuming, I haven't seen anything yet about it, but I would assume that they would include something about who's going to start off number 1 in the Casino Gauntlet match. So some little elements like that are still kind of iffy right now, but at the moment, there are 2 pre-show matches, as I said, one of them being the Big Boom, AJ, and QT Marshall Boom and Doom team against Rocky Romero and Trent Beretta. Wasn't this originally scheduled to be AJ and his son?
Style and substance in the GMC Sierra. Or get this low mileage lease on this Sierra Elevation for around $499 per month.
What's up, guys? Russ here. I'm super excited to tell you guys about the new movie, Sarah's Oil.
God gave me that land for a reason.
It's a sign. I believe in signs.
In the 1900s, there was so much tension. Young Sarah Rector has to overcome.
It's my land.
You want a war? She overcomes it because of her family and her faith.
Dear Lord, help me keep what's mine.
Her name is Sarah Rector. You're going to be hearing a lot about her.
I can't wait for you guys to watch this movie. Make sure you check it out.
Sarah's Oil, rated PG, now playing in theaters.
His son can't wrestle. His son's like 13.
Could have sworn that they were saying that he was supposed to wrestle for some reason, which, yeah, would have been the surprise for me. So I don't know. Maybe I got my wires crossed, but you've seen this before. I'm sure it's going to be basically the same thing. They'll come out. They'll say boom a lot. There'll be cookies, maybe. I have had one of those cookies.
Double chocolate cookies.
They're pretty good, but not enough to justify building a whole career out of. I've spoken about that ad nauseum. Y'all know how I feel about that. So they win.
The career is built off of the savings you get at Costco.
Hmm?
That's the career. The career is Costco's great. And also Irisol. I give this match a potential 3 chicken bakes out of 5. Rocky Romero will get pinned because he does, and AJ will bring the boom. And I wonder, like, how much more of these they're gonna have.
The end of time.
Yeah, it's your typical pre-show match with AJ on it. So, you know, it's one of those ones that everyone will be like slightly underwhelmed with going in. Well, you'll get insanely over in the match itself, and yeah, and it doesn't really hurt anybody one way or the other because just, you know, he's never gonna touch a main card match on these pay-per-views anymore. So, you know, just let it happen. It seems to work for the live audience pretty much 90% of the time. So I'm sure they'll enjoy it. And yeah, AJ and QT Marshall will win. Yeah, but I just don't know if they'll do some sort of turn for QT Marshall properly. Cause presumably, they're turning babyface for this, but they've not spent any time on like main roster TV doing this. It's pretty much has all happened primarily on Ring of Honor. So.
Is that where they've been like building the angle? I just assumed that they just like announced it and that was it.
They did they did a couple of digital exclusives with like the Don Callis family beating up AJ, and I think AJ went to QT for like assistance in a segment that probably aired on ROH. But I would imagine that the turn for QT was in these segments and in the match he had with Paul Walter Hauser, which was really good at the last Ring of Honor show. And hey, if this is a way to potentially use QT, you got a fun little opening act babyface tag team, I'm all right with it. My hope for this match is you get a spot with Trent's mom bringing out a tray of cookies that is then eaten by the Rizzler. Like, first of all, that'll get a bigger pop than anything that happens in the ring. And I think Trent's mom, Sue, is tremendous, and that would be a fun way to tie this all together.
Sounds like this would be one of those fantasy booking things that we would do, right?
Yeah, like if I was fantasy booking, I'd be like, yeah, Trent's mom had a tray of cookies. You know, somebody gets hit with the tray of cookies, and then the Rizzler eats the cookies as AJ does a powerbomb for the win on Rocky Romero.
There's also not a tray of cookies online, but $200,000 in a 4-way tag team match. Anthony Bowens and Max Caster against Austin Gunn and Juice Robinson, against the Outrunners, and against Big Bill and Brian Keefe. I'm curious about this, and I didn't think about this before until I wrote this up the other day when I added this into the mix. Has there ever been something that I've missed out on that explains the arbitrary numbers of how much these matches are for? Because it seems like it's just sort of, you know, all over the place. It's like, here's 4 tag teams for $200,000. Later on, we're going to talk about $1 million trios match. There's like $100,000 singles matches, or, you know, $500,000 4-ways that are singles. Or has there ever been any kind of like, we're going to explain specifically the amount other than just Young Bucks don't have money?
That's the only explanation I've heard. Callum, have you heard anything more in depth?
No, but I don't see why there necessarily needs to be an explanation more in depth about the amount of money that's on the line for these.
Doesn't need to be. I was just curious if maybe they had said something like, one of those like digital exclusive things where somebody's just like, oh man, like 200K is what I need or something, like specific amount.
In this case, 200K because each man would theoretically split 100,000 with his partner. So if you have 100,000 for a singles match,
Yeah.
there's a 200,000 because they're a tag team. I guess if the Gun Club wins or if the Bang Bang Gang wins, they could potentially split it 4 or 5 ways, depending on how generous they are. But more than likely, it'll be the not acclaimed winning this match.
Machine learning is advancing, but businesses wonder if some machines can keep up.
Let's welcome our new coworker, Jeff.
Copier has a great idea.
Wonder if it's the same idea as yesterday.
It's a performance issue, really. I know people push your buttons, but you still have to deliver.
Anything can change the world of work. ADP Assist is AI, informed by workplace data, and designed for the next anything.
Is that me?
I need you to come with us.
The not acclaimed winning this match.
I think it's just so like matches that would otherwise be like have no real purpose to be on a show like this, or on just an episode of Dynamite, pretty much does have a rationale for it, at least fighting for more than your traditional pay pack would be. It's like now that you no longer have rankings in order to try and boost you further up by just having traditional matches, now you need something, at least give people something more tangible to fight for. And so they've decided to now, for at least the time being, to settle on additional monetary payments for winning matches.
Very much speaks to how so much in AEW is based off of gambling. It's just like, this is about money. And, all the other house call, this, and Double or Nothing that, and whatnot. So it really doesn't matter, because it's not like this is actually like, he's not going to actually give $200,000 to whoever wins this match compared to if they didn't. So it's just 4 teams that he decided that he wanted to book on the card. And I don't know if there's anything going on with any of these that would specify like, okay, it makes more sense for this person to, win compared to the other ones or something. So I kind of just assume that maybe it's going to just go to like the Outrunners. Maybe it's Caster and Bowens. I don't know. It's kind of flip a coin scenario for me.
I mean, to me, the only angle that would make sense is the Acclaimed winning, because it's the will they won't they of them getting back together. And no one really cares at this point. But that's where I see this going. Outrunners would be fun to play around with the money aspect. Or, and this won't happen, but you could give it to Bill and Keith and have Jericho be like, well, give me my cut of the money. And that's how Jericho comes back being greedy and wanting to take their money.
Just gotta dabble in the money a little bit.
The only group involved in this that is like any like inkling of a story right now is the Acclaimed. So, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they'll win, because it just means that the finish in some form or fashion will revolve around the progression of this Acclaimed story, about whether they win and it brings them one step closer to regrouping, or they don't win and it just continues to stall that reunion for now. But I think most people like probably share Rob's sentiment at this point, which is we really don't care about the Acclaim getting back together. It's like, it was a thing that happened. It was really great for the like a year and a half while it was like at its peak, and then it just started to wither away. They stuck with Billy Gunn way too long, and then they went their separate ways, and now they're trying to force it back because trying to go their separate ways has not worked out well for them. But this is one of these like these little things that there are certain people that will just get pushed regardless. Like, I think probably the biggest comparison I can give is that you know how Shawn Michaels used to always push Gallus.
Yeah.
Even though nobody seemed to care or have any interest in Gallus. This is Tony Khan's Gallus, essentially. Like, he just wants this and Sammy Guevara are basically just hills that Tony Khan will die on forever and ever and ever and just will never give up on, regardless of what every single person in the crowd seems to be telling him about them.
I like Bowens. I like Caster, on their own separate things, doing their own thing, whatever. I liked the Acclaim. But, the Acclaimed split up and then they tried to do stuff separately and I wasn't really connecting with any of that. So sometimes you do just sort of go back to the well and it works. And then other times it's more like this where it just feels a little too transparently backtracking. And yeah, the grand scheme of things, they're not the most important thing going on for now either. So that doesn't really help. But when they're in a match like this, where it's just a bunch of people wrestling for nothing, they could win and it could be like, wow, okay, we actually do get along better than we think that we do. And let's give this another shot. Or it could just be, you cost me $100,000. I hate your guts. And now Bang Bang Gang are celebrating or something. So flip a coin. It really doesn't matter. I don't think anybody's going to make or break their interest in this pay-per-view based off of this match or anything. And it's way more important that there's another match that's happening that's for $1 million. And it's a trios match between Kenny Omega and Jurassic Express, so Luchasaurus and Jungle Jack Perry, against the Young Bucks and Josh Alexander. And the setup for Dynamite is essentially the idea of Young Bucks should choose whether or not they're going to join the Don Callis family. We talked about this a little bit before when we talked about the hot tags last week. I don't think that they're going to make a decision on this episode of Dynamite/Collision. I am expecting it to be more of one of those scenarios where they are kind of going back and forth about it, and then some kind of a brawl erupts, because Kenny Omega is just labeled as he's returning. So I'm assuming a promo segment. And then that leads into some kind of shenanigans with these people. I think it's going to make it seem like they're conflicted, but they fight alongside Josh Alexander. And then when we get to the pay-per-view itself, I think that that's when they make the decision to, not go with the Don Callis family. It could be that they decide to join, but how big is that family going to get? So there's a certain point, you got enough people. I don't think you need the Young Bucks in there.
Yeah, I think this is just leading to the beginning of the reuniting of the OG Elite. And maybe, because they've been talking about this for a while now, like it could be one last run of the OG Elite. So maybe they're just looking at it like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite clear where the story, or at least on the surface where the story seems to be going. They might have some trick up their sleeve to subvert that in some form or fashion. But right now, it just seems that they're just going to continue on the path to eventually the Bucks turning babyface and reuniting with Kenny Omega as part of the Elite. But it's whether we see any like real definitive movement towards that in this match, whether the thing they're doing on Dynamite about them having to basically have an ultimatum to join the Don Callis family or not does have any sort of significant fallout, whether it's just something to attract people in, but then it's just going to be stalled a little bit longer, or you're just going to have an incident with Kenny and Jurassic Express involved to stall that and prevent any kind of definitive decision being made. Match itself should be a lot of fun because they, AEW does have a specialty in trios matches and multi-man matches, and these guys are all great. So the match itself should be a lot of fun. It's just whether there's anything more significant than Kenny and Jurassic Express winning, or whether do we see a very definitive the Bucks turning their backs on them? Maybe the Bucks decide to go their own ways entirely, away from Kenny and away from Don Callis family, and just be on their own for a while. Maybe disappear for a bit as well, because the Bucks do tend to stick around for a while, but then they will occasionally feel like if they get a bit long in the tooth, they will take a few months out before coming back and resetting on their new path. So maybe this could be the opportunity, but for now, I'll just stick to like Kenny and Jurassic Express win, and we'll see what happens afterwards.
Yeah, I don't think that this is going to be one of those scenarios where they have like some wild twist to it, where it'll be like, I don't know, Kenny Omega joins the Don Callis family instead, or, like any kind of like weird, wacky thing that tends to happen in pro wrestling. It feels to me like they are just going to go the simple route of just Young Bucks decide, hey, we're not really into the idea of you continuing to beat up on our buddy Kenny, and then maybe Kenny is kind of the go-between like fostering a better relationship between them and Jack Perry. Maybe it'll be like, hey, you could set aside your differences and I'm going to be that kind of in-between guy. But we'll see. They threw Josh Alexander in here. I don't know if it's just because they were like, let's throw him a bone or, what. But this could have very easily been any kind of other scenarios. So it's for $1 million. They'll split it $333,333.33 each. I guess
I can see Don trying to take the bulk of that, and that
he at least gets that other penny.
Yeah, like that'll be something that pushes the Bucks away from him. Like, why are you trying to take our money?
You'd be like, yeah, you get to split it evenly. The Young Bucks get half, and Josh Alexander gets half.
Or like, no, it's $1 million for the family, and you got to give all of the members a piece. So if you don't join me, you're not getting a piece of the money.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to him saying something like that. Make him, total scumbag character. That's what he should be. That's what he is. There's a tag team match for the AEW World Tag Team Championship. Makes perfect sense that it's a tag team match. Brody King and Bandito are up against FTR, Cash Wheeler and Dex Harwood. I fully expect these tag titles to change hands.
Yeah.
I think that's it feels like a safe bet right now. FTR are doing some really good stuff. They built a lot of the current tag team division around them. And yeah, as good as Brodito have been, and they've been like a very fresh air as a not so much a thrown together tag team, but as a unit which many people didn't expect to have this level of longevity. But they've worked out really well, and they're popular, and they've been doing some cool stuff, and that's always a team they can now go back to in the future. But I think right now FTR have been having a lot of feuds like below the surface, and now feels like a good time to switch the titles back onto them. And yeah, we have the Cope and Christian rematch bubbling under the surface, so they'll eventually come back to that, whether that's at World's End or whether that's early next year. You imagine will be the title switching back to them at some point. But yeah, in order to get to that destination, you need FTR to win the titles first. So this feels like the right time to do that. It feels like what we expected to happen at Forbidden Door, and has been pushed forward a few months thanks to like the unexpected success that Brodito have had. So I think it was just a nice little diversion, but they are now going back onto the course that they'd set a couple of months back.
Yeah, I feel like there's a good portion of this that Tony Khan knew that Edge was going to have to go off and film for, is it Percy Jackson, I think? Never seen it.
Yeah, Percy Jackson. Yeah.
Those movies or shows any good? Anybody watch any of that?
I don't watch, but they seem to be critically acclaimed. I never saw the movies either, so I can't speak to it.
But I could see a scenario where he told him about that, and then Khan was like, all right, well, I want to do this FTR versus Cope and Cage thing, so I guess we'll just hold off on that until you're done. So what do we do in the meantime? Well, we could just put the belts on FTR and have a run with them, or let's just go with Brodito and have a little bit of, something else going on. And they've been a fun tag team that people have been enjoying, so it all works out in the end like that. But eventually you got to lose the titles, and I think that now's the time. So FTR winning, 100% where I'm going.
Yeah, I mean, as somebody who was all in on, no pun intended, on the Edge and Christian FTR feud, I do think, whether it was out of anybody's control or not, it's cooled off a bit to a point where it might need to be reheated, maybe more than anybody would have thought, but I still think that's the way to go, and I'm excited to see what happens next in the tag division.
I will say that even though I fully expect that to go in, and I understand the kind of like surface level appeal of having Cope and Christian win the tag team titles, I do think that AEW have done a good job of kind of reviving and resuscitating the tag team division a lot over the last few months. And so in order to build all of that just for a nostalgia run for two people that are over 10 years past their prime, probably less in terms of Christian, because Christian's prime was only a couple of years ago. But for two guys that are very much on the older end and close to the end of the road than towards it, I don't think that it's worth potentially pissing away all that goodwill for two old guys. So hopefully, it will happen. I think that it's in order to just get them on the record books, and in the same way that made Sting a tag team champion, he's shown a lot of respect to veterans of the game before that have been under AEW's employ. So, but hopefully, when Edge and Christian do become tag team champions, it's not a super long-term thing that causes the tag team division to fall back into old habits that we had with, like, let's say the Hurt Syndicate being champions for as long as they were.
What I will say is, and this is granted, Copeland got hurt during his TNT title run. I thought that he was doing a good job of working consistently, and Christian typically does a good job of working consistently. So if it's a short run, that actually spotlights the teams in the company, then I'm all for it.
Depending on how many people they want to work with and that they feel like rejuvenated to work with and all, I could see them getting 2-month reign out of it or something like that. Maybe 3 months, depending on how many people there are. But basically you go put the belts on FTR here, and then either at like World's End, or I don't think that they've announced when Revolution is supposed to be. They're pretty late on the game for announcing things for 2026, funny enough. But maybe like Revolution or something, FTR drops belts, and then you get a little bit of time in between that and like Double or Nothing or so, they can lose the titles to somebody else. I don't know, it kind of all depends on when they announce all these things, and we don't know yet. So, but I think that there's, they could have a tag team match against the Bucks. They could have a match against Jurassic Express. You got Jet Speed. You got, people mentioned earlier, the Outrunners could have a fun match with
the Outrunners, yeah.
Maybe not Big Boom AJ and QT Marshall. Maybe you don't need to do that, but
depends on how their kids feel about TikTok. Yeah, they might want to get that in there just to be like, hey, look, we wrestled the Costco.
I got no transition for this one, but Darby Allin's facing Pac. This is a match that I am the least interested in as far as like the main card being, is there like a hook to this? The hook's not in the card, by the way. But it's also just one of those ones where it's like, all right, it doesn't seem to mean anything. There's no stakes, but Darby Allin and Pac will have a good enough match that's really what most people care about when you're watching an AEW pay-per-view. So I'm not loving the slow drip of how there's been like 5 potential ends to this Darby Allin versus Death Riders story, and they just continue to keep doing it. To me, it sort of feels like when you see like a movie franchise where it's like, oh, okay, like the series ended. Why are there 8 more movies? Star Wars. And
Speaking of, I just found out they're making another Fockers movie. So that's a
really?
Yeah. Walker-in-law.
That was I only saw the first one. I don't I don't get it how they made a second and a third, and if this is the fourth or something. I don't know. But I'm assuming the only real thing that could happen here could be, and we might see. Oh, okay, sorry about all the sirens, everybody. It's one of those days. The only thing that I could see happening is if they do something on Dynamite where they come out of the Blood and Guts match being like, all right, Moxley is sort of being pushed out because he did tap out and he has been losing some stuff.
Hold on. You don't want to collision.
Yeah, so, I mean...
did they already do that?
Before even mentioning this match, we should say that almost certainly going to be added to the card is going to be a Moxley versus Kyle O'Reilly singles match.
I'm hoping it's a singles match. They left the door open for a team match. I'd rather it be a singles. But yeah, Death Riders were all over Collision. They're cool with Moxley. There was no signs of like, we're going to kill this guy.
Well, that's lame. No, it's no wonder I didn't hear anything about it then. Because I was like, oh, something would have happened on Dynamite or on Collision. Like, you know, if somebody would have turned or something, then I would have heard about it. And yeah, I was going to say if Pac is going to be like the new leader, then maybe they could have Pac beat Darby and be like, you know, Moxley's lost his edge and I'm the guy who's the real bastard here or something. If not, if it's just quite literally, how about we just do another match between two of those people? Let's pick it's Darby Allin and Pac. Then that's kind of lame.
Well, I mean,
it's like, you know, when I don't want to see coming out of War Games for them to be like, and they're going to do it. That's the thing. So if anybody says like, you know, you would criticize WWE for the same thing. Yeah, I would. They'll end up being like, oh, you know, on this episode of Raw after Survivor Series, it's going to be Jey Uso against Braun Breaker. And I'm going to be like, I don't fucking care.
But realistically, that's what we're getting here. And it's Pac through Darby through a flaming table. And that's why we're getting the match we're getting. And I think it'll be a good one, you know. I think hopefully we get Mox versus Kyle. Hopefully Kyle gets another win. Or if not that, actually, if we don't get that, then I want to see Kyle do another thing on this card. But I'm going to stop predicting when this thing is going to end because clearly it's not ending anytime soon.
Yeah, I'd say it's another one where the destination is clear. It's just whether like our timing for it is different to what they envisioned for it. I mean, it still seems pretty clear that the idea is you eventually get Moxley kicked out of the group for his lack of spirit and his lack of fight, and whether that involves like him losing a match to Kyle O'Reilly here on this show as well, and then that being the real kind of catalyst, especially if you have Pac beat Darby Allin, and then it's like, okay, we're all fighting for the cause and we're all trying to like restore the prestige back to the Death Riders, and you're just not carrying a weight anymore, you've just lost all of your edge, then I guess this could be a means of doing that. You could almost do them back to back of like having Pac beat Darby Allin and then feeling really like good about it, and then you like Moxley comes out feeling reinvigorated, has a match with Kyle O'Reilly, loses, and then it's like, oh, like we felt like we were on the right track, and then you've just lost again, and now we need to understand what the cancer is in this group, and it's you, and get him kicked out of it. I think just like just from my own standpoint, like Darby Allin versus Pac sounds like a great match to have. So I'm very much looking forward to watching it. I think I saw information out there saying this will only be Pac's 6th singles match on pay-per-view for AEW.
That's
really
insane.
Yeah, in between, like, you know, obviously he's had a significant number of injuries and breaks off of things due to like visas and that information, and then he was part of a trios team for the majority of his time there as well. Whether that's with Penta and Phoenix, or whether that's then with the Death Riders and like the group with Claudio and Wheeler for a while as well, prior to the Death Riders. So yeah, it is quite interesting. This is only a 6th singles match on pay-per-view, but yeah, it should be like a really fun one as well. And we've seen what they were willing to do to each other in the Blood and Guts match, so we'll see how they carry that over into there. So I think that we'll have. I think Pac will get the victory here, and then once they do, almost certainly announce a Moxley versus Kyle O'Reilly match. I imagine Kyle O'Reilly will win that match.
See, I'm kind of thinking that Kyle O'Reilly already had his spotlight on the Blood and Guts match, so if they do another match there, it'll probably be Moxley getting a win back. But then again, if that's not something that they've been like hinting at towards on Dynamite or Collision, then maybe I'm missing out on something like that. Yeah.
My argument with that is like you just negate everything from the Blood and Guts, and the entire build to Blood and Guts. You have Kyle O'Reilly just lose to Moxley in a singles match. Like you need to, unless you're completely reheating Moxley, which I just don't feel like. It just doesn't feel like that's the vibe of this. This isn't the case of you use Kyle O'Reilly to rebound Moxley. You need to just keep Moxley losing. And I think Moxley's one of the few people that has the cachet and the reputation behind him that he could literally just lose over and over and over again and not really. And then, once he eventually comes back and back to prominence, no one's going to bat an eyelid that he's been losing for several months in a row. So I 100% think that it's Kyle O'Reilly versus Moxley. Then if they were to, other side, like if they were to have Moxley win, that would be like a bit of booking malpractice, really, like really cutting the legs off of Kyle O'Reilly.
I mean, there's precedent of like they used to say back in the day of you could beat the Horsemen at War Games, and then like Flair would just come out on TV as cocky as ever, and then go back to winning as he needed to. But this isn't that type of like business structure, and I wouldn't have Moxley win whatever he's going to do at this pay-per-view. I do hope it's a singles with O'Reilly. I do hope they heat O'Reilly up to doing something significant as a singles, as sort of like not a gold watch run like they gave Joe, but Kyle O'Reilly could still give a lot, and I'd like to see him get that chance.
So we got the setup of the Casino Gauntlet is going to be kind of all up in the air because, that's kind of what the Casino Gauntlet is all about. You don't know who is going to be in the match. You don't know when they're going to be in the match, and you don't know how many people are going to get into the match before the match is over with. Currently, there are only a few people that are announced for this. Bobby Lashley, Shelton Benjamin, Ricochet, Kevin Knight, and Mike Bailey. But the other people could be, there could be 2 more people. There could be 7 more people, whoever they want to throw in here. And we don't yet know, as far as I'm aware, we don't know who's going to be number 1, right?
No.
So that could change dynamics, even though that doesn't always factor into the end of this whole thing. But we talked about the national championship already in some fashion when they announced it, so we don't need to repeat the same opinions of whether or not this is a good idea. You know where I stand. I think that the national title is a stupid name. I don't think that they need another title, all the other things like that. Regardless of how I feel, Tony Khan's going, hey, I can't book something unless I got $100,000 on the line or a title. And I'm going to throw that in there. And you're getting another match for another championship, one way or another. And I am assuming that this is just as much a same mid-card thing as everything else. I don't think this is going to be any special or any different. So it's anybody's fair game to win, although obviously that's not going to be Shelton Benjamin. If one of the Hurt Syndicate is going to win, it's going to be Bobby Lashley. Could very well be him.
I think the first champion sets the tone for what they think the belt is. I don't want it to be Lashley. I like Lashley. I don't like Lashley in AEW because of I just think that what he brings isn't what most people want from AEW. I think what Shelton Benjamin brings is what people want from AEW. And yes, it's still the issue of putting the title on a 50-year-old man. Callum was the one who informed me the other day that Benjamin is 50 years old, which is insane to me. But if you're going to give it to a legend, I'd rather go to Benjamin. Other than that, of the announced names, I guess Ricochet. But this is the spot where I said, like, look, if O'Reilly isn't wrestling Mox, then I want him as the first national champion. I mean, if you can find anyone that's being currently pushed properly and is younger, absolutely. Maybe Callum will name some names. But of the names that are announced, I'm thinking Ricochet. I have a soft spot for Benjamin, and if he's in it, I want O'Reilly to win it.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that they were building up O'Reilly to get this championship. I just think that at least all rumors seem to be circulating towards them doing a Mox versus O'Reilly match on the show itself, and I think that in a way that could have a bigger impact for O'Reilly to beat Moxley 1-on-1 than to win this championship, which sounds weird to say, but that's just what it feels like, because this is just, a brand new mid-card championship that they're going to have that's almost like an excuse to do a Casino Gauntlet match, which we haven't had for a little while. So these matches are typically fun. Hopefully they don't go in the direction they went with for the All-In Casino Gauntlet matches, which I thought were bloated and pretty boring, especially the men's one. So hopefully they go back to the more dynamic formula they had beforehand. And I think that they will do, because this one, you're not having as many, you're not telling as many interweaving stories, at least with the people that you've announced so far. The only really story that you've got in the match so far is between Ricochet and the Her Syndicate. And there's a chance they build the whole thing around that, and that Ricochet is the first champion, which would make sense if the purpose of the title is to be a roaming championship that goes to different promotions, because Ricochet has done stuff with New Japan, he's done stuff with Noah in the past and other groups as well, so him being a travelling champion makes a lot of sense. Out of the names currently suggested, he seems the best fit for me to win this title and to give him something after the good work he's done since joining AEW. He's not won a championship yet, so it would be good to give him something. But in terms of it does feel like the sort of situation and championship where you could just have someone randomly, maybe even someone that's even not a full-time AEW guy, win it in order to establish its status as this multi-promotional, will tour around with this title. If you pick up someone from New Japan, maybe a Gabe Kidd or someone like that, if he's available and ready to wrestle, then he could be in this match. I'd say it's hard to predict with so many possibilities, and just there's so many people that aren't named on this card, and there's so many people that could do something. I mean, we don't have a match for an Orange Cassidy yet. People, and we know how much that they trust him with top championships. So there's plenty of other members of the Don Callis family, like Hechicero and Lance Archer or anybody like that could not necessarily win the championship, but be involved in this match in some regard anyway. This could be who knows, they might have something really special up their sleeve, and this is where Swerve returns and gets a title straight away. But out of the names that are currently announced, which is the only real barometer we have for who's going to win this, I'd say Ricochet is the favourite.
He definitely stands out a lot more than some of the other picks. Like I said, they're not going to give this belt to Shelton Benjamin. And I highly, highly doubt that it's just going to be randomly Speedball wins or something. So Bobby Lashley and Ricochet right now are the two that I'm going back and forth between. I'd rather it be Lashley in some fashion if they're going to do that as a means of we feel obligated to do something with him because we keep pushing him as this potential world champion, and we don't really want to make him the world champion. So this is a compensation thing. But if you were to say to me,
because that's isn't that the Okada thing?
Well, that's kind of the same thing, which then points to the whole, I mean, Okada's got 2 championships. Why do you need to create another one just because you're in that position again? But if you were to say to me, what would you actually rather happen without the whole, politics of that potentially being something that's going on, I would rather it be Ricochet, because as much as a title win for Lashley could end up being okay, and a title win for Speedball could be like any of those could be potentially fun, barring the whole they don't need this title to begin with thing. Ricochet, I feel, is somebody that could use that more, as like he hasn't really accomplished anything yet in AEW. He's better off than what he was in WWE, so that's already an accomplishment in some fashion, but I'd like to see him like win a championship. And if it's this one, cool. You know, the other belts are tied up with other things right now, and confusing as they are. And I highly doubt that he's going to win either of those right now. So right now, I'm going to say that it's probably between those two. I am hoping for Ricochet. And we'll see if anything changes on, Dynamite or Collision. I'm sure that there should be at least something else going on with that. So, yeah, that's one thing. But then there's also the TNT title, and that's Kyle Fletcher against Mark Briscoe. This is a no DQ match, and there is an extra stipulation added onto it. If Briscoe loses, he will be forced to join the Don Callis family. So he doesn't get an option like the Young Bucks have. This would be a forced thing. And we've seen that play out in lots of different ways. Bryan Danielson being part of the Wyatt family. You've got John Cena and, being part of the whole Nexus thing, whatever. Usually it doesn't work out all that well. And it's almost a double-edged sword in that if you do this stipulation and let's say Mark Briscoe wins, then it becomes, okay, well then the people that were interested in seeing what happens if he loses are a little bit disappointed, but at least, hey, there's a title change. If you have him lose, then it becomes predictable because, well then, of course he lost, you added that stipulation to it. My preference would be just put the belt on Briscoe. I don't think that Fletcher necessarily should be losing the title right now, but you know what? If you're continuing to go down this path instead of just moving on, you set yourself up for a position where you kind of need to put the belt on Briscoe, I think.
Yeah, I think this is... I mentioned on the Wrestle Dream show that I thought Briscoe winning was an easy feel-good moment on a show that was needing them. This seems like you've tied your hands and you must give Briscoe the win. Not that you can't do the other thing, but I see no reason to do it.
Yeah, I don't see a good scenario. I mean, as I say, if anybody could prove me wrong, it's like Mark Briscoe in any kind of storyline because of just how perpetually over he is as a babyface and underdog character. But I don't think that telling a story of him like forcefully joining the Don Callis family and basically spending the next few months undermining it. That's the issue that you have with, like we've mentioned the John Cena Nexus one. Like, on the surface it might sound like, oh, this is a great way of getting the Nexus over, but realistically it just meant that you spent the next few months of like Cena being there and just undermining everything the Nexus did and making them look even more incompetent. And they've just have this guy that's supposedly part of their team but just consistently makes them look stupid and ruins their chances of like building any sort of momentum because he's just there disrupting everything. So I think that would be the same thing with the Don Callis family. Like people would just still naturally want to cheer Mark Briscoe, and so if you make him part of the family, this storyline only really works if like you have some sort of intention of the person joining Don Callis family actually following through on it and like submitting to the stipulation of the match and not going against it or trying to undermine it in some way, which I just don't think works with Mark Briscoe. So you have Mark Briscoe win, the crowd are super into him. It feels like it's a good moment for him to have earned something throughout the year. He's been doing some really good stuff. He beat MJF recently, so it feels like that would be a good opportunity to crown him as a champion. It's only the TNT Championship, which it's still a big deal, but Fletcher's held it for a while. It doesn't necessarily mean that he couldn't just beat Briscoe for it in the future. Like this could just be like an on-running thing for a couple of months where they trade the belts back and forth a little bit. But I think that I think this is the this is a good moment to help establish Briscoe a little bit more and give him some kudos for a very good year so far. And Fletcher can always move on to bigger and better things. Fletcher's is going to be protected even if he loses this match. It's not like he's lost to just some scrub and they're just moving on from him. He'll be whether it's in the Continental Classic, whether it's winning another title down the road, he'll be protected. I don't have any kind of worries that they're just going to lose momentum on him.
Do you guys think that this is more of we really just want to put a belt on Briscoe, or do you think that it's more of we've got other plans for Fletcher? And if we're going to take the belt off of him, who should we go with? Well, probably Briscoe.
I think this is probably more of we've got other plans for Fletcher, but also let's give a nod of approval to Briscoe, who's been a top babyface all year.
I kind of see the opposite. Because I don't see what the obvious path for Fletcher is to move on, because he's not going to win the Unified Championship. I don't think he's going to win the Continental Classic. I don't think that he's going to. He's definitely not going to float straight for the World Championship or anything of that ilk just yet after recently fighting for it. Unless, maybe the plan is for him to win the Ring of Honor Championship, but I thought that was going to be Josh Alexander, but they might decide, why don't we give it to Fletcher instead? He's been the TV champion. Let's make him the world champion of Ring of Honor for a little while as well, just because Bandito's been feuding on and off pretty much exclusively over the Ring of Honor title with members of the Don Callis family, so maybe it's Fletcher's turn to step up and try and win it.
But I think that's a step down, just because it's ROH.
I'd agree. I think he would have proven it, especially because he already had won that, what was it, the TV title 2 years ago or so?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think it's only a step down if you present it that way. I say Bandito is the current Ring of Honor world champion, and his stock's never been higher than it is right now. That's not because of the tag. And that's not because of the tag title run. That's just because he's presented well on television. It's not even really for the Ring of Honor run. It's more for the fact that he's just presented well on television and perceived as a top guy. So as long as you continue to present Fletcher in that way and have him defend the title often, whatever title it ends up being, then Fletcher can help make that championship even more prestigious than it already is. So I'd say, or maybe they just don't want to have him be champion for a little while. He can just be a top guy in the Don Callis family, he can still be fighting for titles and still be fighting for opportunities, but just be, there is always the risk of keeping a guy like Fletcher on ice too long, because even though he's got all the skills and all the tools, you don't want to lose the momentum that you have with a guy of his talent. But I still think that right now it's more of a reward of Briscoe's been so good for so long, and he's